Today I'm going to start a new deep dive series as well. I'm going to have two of them going at a time here. The first, of course, is going to be Dragon Warriors. We're going to be finishing that one up here not relatively soon, but sooner than I would like. And so I'm going to start a second deep dive series on Anima Beyond Fantasy, which is a super crunchy game that's been around for a while. It was originally published in 2005 by Edge Entertainment in Spanish, which is a problem if you go to look at the books on Drive-Thru RPG, which I have provided a link for there in the description. You can go directly to Drive-Thru RPG and pick up the books. They are only available in PDF right now for direct buy. They are available on secondary market. I will warn you, secondary market is fairly expensive. These are not cheap books. All that being said, so I told you it comes around Edge Entertainment before Edge Entertainment got bought by or merged in with Fantasy Flight and all those guys and Asmodee and all those companies all kind of merged in one big conglomerate. That's who published this game, and it was 2005. Okay, the game itself, just so you know what Anima is, it is a Japanese European collaboration that relies heavily on major themes that are prevalent in JRPGs, things like Final Fantasy, Dragon Warrior, things like that. But it absolutely has tons of elements of Western fantasy, medieval armor, lots of medieval type structures, feudal structures, things like that. Sorry. But it focuses heavily on martial arts, honor codes, key, things like that are all part of the game, which is pretty impressive. And we'll get more into that when we get into system deep dives. But as far as what the game itself is, it is super crunchy. That is a truism. It is a D100 system using open-ended roles. Again, get into how open-ended roles and pummels a lot work when we talk about the system. But it is inspired pretty heavily by Rollmaster, which will be a turnoff for a lot of people. But if you're like me and you like Rollmaster, you can handle this game. It's actually easier than Rollmaster because it doesn't require as much table section. We'll get into how the tables and combat and stuff works, and that does rely on tables, but it also uses a D10 for its mechanics, only for attribute rolls. Its attributes are roll under system, 10 being the human limit. Most characters in the game are human, but there are creatures called the Nephilim that you can play, and they're pretty cool. You like I said, you can learn key, but characters are very standard characters for fantasy kind of games, where there's spellcasters, there's thieves and assassins, and there's warriors, and there are, I believe, 6 or 7 archetypes that you can play. Each one having a class. There's 20 different classes in the game. However, that being said, it's a very diverse powers system, and that's what makes it cool. They have what's called key manipulation, which is like martial arts, energy blast, power fist, things like that are all going to be key manipulation. Magic, standard magic, lightning bolts, fireballs, all that kind of stuff. You're going to have mentalism or psychic powers. You can become a summoner, or you can gain what's called Lan, which are divine gifts from the deities themselves. So that's one of the cool parts of this game. And it's super customizable. You can build literally any character you want. It uses a development point system. It has some weird roles. Again, we'll get into it when we get into the deep dive on character creation, on how you can spend your points. But it is a very combat heavy game, so you're going to want to diversify mostly into combat rather than skills, although skills are kind of important as well. It's going to be really good to see how that changes as far as if you're used to standard D&D type games. You're not used to the customization this game can provide, because you can play a warrior who can cast spells. You can play. It's just going to be very expensive to do. Very similar to the way you can do it with Rollmaster. And then the last thing kind of talk about with it as a general rule is the fact that this game has some very quirky aspects. They did produce a second edition called Core Exet 2.0. The problem is it's only available in foreign language. I don't even think it's available on drive-through. Um, it's very, very difficult to get your hands on the Core Exet 2, and it's not in English unless you read, I believe, French is what it was published in. Unless you read French or can speak fluid French, um, just stick with the first edition. They did update settings. They put out some new books focusing on Key and expanded the world lore with some new books. But I'm focusing on the first edition because it's the one that was published in English. That being said, a little bit about what Anima is. Where did it come from? I already mentioned it was published in 2005 by Edge Studios in Spain. It literally came out of nowhere. And like I said, it's a very focused game, kind of JRPG type game. Uh, it was eventually translated by UBIK in France in 2007. That had merged with Edge Entertainment. They had merged. They published the game in French. Um, and then in 2008, it was published again in Spain. Um, and then an English translation was published in 2008 as well by Fantasy Flight Games. Uh, is actually included in their games catalog still. Um, it originally was scheduled to release 2006. Some stuff happened. Nobody's real clear on exactly what happened. It launched at Gen Con Indy back when Gen Con Indy was still a thing, uh, with a full release in the following October. By 2010, they published the core rules in PDF. If you go to the Wikipedia, there is a flaw on the Wikipedia. There's some things in here that have never been published in English that they say are published in English. So uh, the books that were released in English were Beyond Fantasy, which is the core book, the Toolkit, Gaia Volume 1, Beyond the Dream, Dominion of Key, which is Dominus Exet, Those Who Walked Among Us, Arcana Exet, and Prometheum Exet are the books that are published in English. They were published in 2008 through 2013. The books that you really need to run this game really are just Beyond Fantasy, and you could probably do with having Those Who Walked Among Us and Gaia Volume 1 for world lore and monster lore. The rest of them are going to be things that add new lore, new rules, expand on the rules for magic and key and all that kind of stuff. It is a really super well put together game, though. So historically, this game did not last long in America or in English as far as active publication. It is not listed under Fantasy Flight's drive-through anymore. It is actually listed under the Anima project. I did link the drive-through there for you guys. So you guys can find the drive-through there. It went on to become a miniatures game. They produced a non-customizable card game and some video games as well set in this world. I actually own 2 of the video games. They're actually pretty good, believe it or not. But Anima itself is a really good game, highly underappreciated. Like I said, if you're not a crunch guy, you don't like games like Rollmaster, you don't like this heavy crunch games, Anima's not going to be up your alley at all. That does not mean it's a bad game. Not every game is for every gamer. I think that's a misnomer. I've talked about that before in different videos where people have tried to convince themselves that every game has to be made for every player. That is absolutely not true anymore. And this is a great example of it. But if you're looking for a crunchy fantasy game that allows great customization, Anima will scratch that itch for you. The world is well developed. Like I said, it's got splat books for Gaia. If you can speak Spanish, they do have a Gaia Volume 2 in Spanish. So if you're fluent in Spanish and can do your translation as you're reading, by all means, pick up Gaia Volume 2. Apparently, it adds some additional world lore, different continent to play on, some other stuff that I'm not familiar with because I'm not fluent in Spanish, so I don't have it. I don't read it. I've never read it, but from what I've read online, it's supposedly a really good book. Like I said, if you're looking for the game, though, the drive-through does mix the Spanish and English version, so be very careful when looking. Um, when you open up the individual listings, and that's what I would encourage you to do, make sure it's not in Spanish because you can accidentally buy the Spanish version of the game. Um, Still, that's one of the big issues because that's what it was originally published in. Um, and that's Anima in a nutshell. And that's what this video is for. This video is just to introduce you to what Anima is. And like I said, hopefully as we go along, we'll be able to get deeper into this system and you guys can have appreciation for a game that's a little different, a little crunchier. Something that I don't normally focus on a lot is crunchier games. I tend to focus on a lot of games that are a little more rules medium kind of games or rules light type games. Anima is an exception to that. So all that being said, guys, as always, welcome thoughts, comments, questions, concerns below. Uh, Always, yeah, follow through rules. No ad homs, no picking fights, no leave me college dissertations.